welcoming Bruce Nagy, who's a Canadian journalist. I think you were Toronto-based, but now you're living in Kingston, if I'm
Yeah.
mistaken, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've been working too hard and I thought I would sell a condo.
Right on. Okay. So, and it has a real wealth of knowledge and expertise to share with us about clean energy solutions, and has been writing about that field, and has a book that he's published called The Clean Energy Age. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And so I just want to say how I think we're very fortunate to have someone with your depth of experience and knowledge of the area to talk with us, and really looking forward to hearing what you have to say here today.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
Just before you get started, I just want to just mention to everyone here, Bruce has got a presentation he's going to be giving us with PowerPoint and so on. And if you have, I think just in terms of the flow, if we can just let Bruce go through his presentation. If you have questions, I'd invite you to put them into the chat. And then we can take up the questions in order from the chat after Bruce has finished his presentation. Okay. Welcome, Janet, Nick.
Hi.
Hi. We're just about to get started. I was just saying, if you have questions through Bruce's presentation, just type them in the chat, and we'll get to the questions after Bruce has finished the presentation. Does that make sense, you guys? Yeah. Okay. All right. So, hand it over to you, Bruce. Thank you.
Okay, great. I'm going to just share my screen here. I think I can do it. Clicking on a couple of buttons. And you should be able to see a screen that says 10 powerful secrets about clean energy. Can everybody see that?
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
Great. Okay, well, as I started to say, I'm very happy to be here. Thank you to Nick and Bruce for organizing this. I always enjoy sharing what I have learned about clean energy. I think it's important, and I just want to make you could yeah, okay. And so I guess when Nick told me about it, he said, "Come on and talk about your book." So I made a presentation that has a bunch of stuff about my book, which I normally don't do. Normally, I talk to architects and engineers, government planners, and business people about solutions, and that's what I prefer to do. So I was already going to break the rules, and I had already prepared to give you something more than just the book. I wanted to give you the 10 powerful secrets. So now, after I spoke with Bruce earlier, I'll try to tone down the book stuff, and I'll try to focus more on the secrets. So, and what I won't talk about hardly at all is the problem. Here, I think we all know the problem. Glaciers melting, drought, fires, super intense weather, flooding. I do that in my Al Gore group, but I don't want to do that in most of my life. Mostly, I like to focus on solutions because I think too many environmentalists are spending a lot of time scaring the hell out of everybody, and especially during COVID, we're depressed enough, I guess. So I think it's better to, I think, focus on some good news and some ways out of this problem. But of course, I have to do the commercial message for my publisher about the book, so I will do that, some of that right now. The book is it's a very practical document. It has top 10 lists for homeowners and government people and political leaders, business managers. It's the idea is, you know, that we need to make a plan that's going to have impact. And we need to be able to do it at all levels of society without pointing fingers at each other about who is the most responsible. And we need to and it incorporates, it's not my material, it's material that I've been stealing from the best experts for 18 years while writing mostly journalism articles, lots of technical journals, and so on. I think one of the things we need to do when we talk about clean energy is focus on what are the priorities, because it's becoming very confusing for some people when they think of climate change as one problem, but it has hundreds of solutions. And certainly some of the books that have been written have been hard to navigate in that way. So I've tried to be more simplistic and to focus on a few key priorities. So I think in most countries, about 70 or 75% of the emissions problems, so the air problem first, it's the highest priority. Most of those 70 or 75% come from three areas: power plants, buildings, and transportation. I mean, it varies from country to country, but not by much. And cars are more important in the U.S. Buildings are more important in Canada, and you'll often hear the number 40% for buildings, and that this reflects some overlap between power plants and buildings. So the numbers are whatever they are. Okay, but what we do know is that these are the three main areas: buildings, transportation, and power plants and transit. I lump them together because they are government initiatives. And when I talk about a solution, I don't want to talk about something that's still in the lab. I don't want to talk about something that's a PR campaign for the nuclear industry. I want to talk about something that's technically proven, that I have documented many success stories about. And this started with my editors, who said back in the day, and this is going back quite a ways, well, we can't print that stuff, Bruce, unless it's measured and proven and our guys can make money installing it and designing it. Why would we want to go out on a limb like that? You're going to have to find the success stories, which is what I then proceeded to spend the last 18 years doing. And also, it has to be economically viable. It has to be able to be implemented, which is one reason why I don't talk a great deal about the fourth major quadrant, which is eating vegan and agriculture, because it is certainly possible to make progress in that area, but there's less consensus on how to do it. And there's a lot of discussion about some of the studies too. But anyway, there's enough for us to talk about, and I guess one of the reasons that we have to think in practical terms is that there's so much misinformation. In addition to we environmentalists disagreeing, we also have, of course, all of the vested interests spreading as much information as they can. So where did this information come from? Mostly from engineers and architects and government planners and project managers. I'm a columnist for Plumbing Engineer and several other technical publications, but I also write for some mainstream publications such as the International Business Times, which is part of the New York Times Group, and Open Access Government in the UK. I consult governments, some of which I like, some of which I am a little pissed off at. And there's been 200 articles. So I have, I guess, a little bit of credentials, but as I said, I stole all this information from others. The book focuses on the top 10 lists. There's probably something here for everyone, as you can see. And I think that's a good way to do it, because you don't have to agree with my top 10 list. You can take the one out of the book and you can start there and build your own. The idea is to get you going and get you having a plan. It has been endorsed by Catherine McKenna, so that's pretty good. I guess that means something. You can see I'm wearing a tie there. very not normal for me. I was feeling really rare, but she made me comfortable. She's a great lady. She yeah, so we did the little video. I got the endorsement, and it has I've gotten some decent reaction to the book because I guess it's practical. People like that. Lots of radio shows and podcasts. So, buy the book. The publisher wants me to say that. At your favorite bookseller. Okay, moving along. What is the good news? The good news, apart from me peddling my book and all the floods out there, is that we are making some progress, and most of it is local. Cities are going green. I think you probably know about this out there. The federal government is writing the checks. I wish they would get rid of the pipeline, but they, on the whole, are not doing a bad job. I have a love-hate relationship. When they ask me for success stories and consulting, I love them. But then a week later, they've got the problems going on with Alberta. So anyway, okay. Elsewhere in the world, a lot of these are American because I write on both sides of the border. We do have progress. The coal capital of the world, Indiana, is going green. The nuclear plants in Illinois, which is where most of the reactors are, they're all being closed. Texas is the wind leader, and now recently a solar leader, which you might not expect. The capital of oil in the U.S., right? Hawaii, I guess, would be one of along with California, would be bragging about all their solar, lots of rooftop solar in Hawaii. And geothermal. Geothermal is a great solution for us in the Northeast. And New York is really, they've been fighting with their utilities and pipelines. And they've been, I just want to stop and say, can you hear me? Is everybody still hearing me?
Yeah.
It's coming through loud and clear on my end here, Bruce.
Okay, just wanted to check because
Yeah, me too.
I don't know what I've done, but I can't see the little boxes. But anyway, okay, I'll keep going. In New York, they've been fighting with the pipelines and the gas utilities, and they've decided to invest heavily into geothermal. They've got 300 homes now all over the state renovated with geothermal, and they got 600 more orders on the book. So the world is getting better. Globally, we think there will be 30 million electric vehicles by 2030. Tesla has caused all the other car companies to go, oh, I guess we should get into the business. So and the other thing that many environmentalists don't talk enough about, perhaps, is that the economics are now with us. And in fact, that's most of the change happened because the economics are now with us. I mean, we spent 30 years talking about it, not much happened, but we're starting to see change now. But of course, we need a lot more momentum. And so, at the national level or the international level, you have the leaders doing the photo ops, and we have agreed to sign a pledge to hold another meeting. It's slow, it's plodding, and it's never enough. So, but how does change actually happen? It happens actually with us. It starts with us. It starts with our, NGOs, the public, corporations, and then we convince our local cities, our governments, and states and provinces to do things properly. And then finally, the national governments, oh, well, we might get some votes. We better write some checks. So I think that we have to recognize that's how change happens, and we have to, conduct ourselves accordingly. Okay, so let's talk about some things that are for you, what can you do on your own level, in your own lives? I don't want you to think that I'm pointing fingers at you and saying, it's all the problem of the people. Although if you have an SUV in your driveway and a gas furnace in your basement, then you are part of the problem. But also I recognize, and everyone I think now recognizes, that corporations are not going to change. They're going to be beholden to shareholders, and regulation is the key. So governments have got to step up. We, as consumers, have got to step up, and corporations, after they're regulated, will step up. Too bad they couldn't before. Okay, the top 10 secrets. Number one, I'm trying to make this sexy and Hollywood and exciting, but it's just insulation, but it is really good economically if you insulate your home because you'll get the money back so quickly. What is passive house? I think some of you will know what it is, and if you don't, I'm going to give you a quick little primer here. It's like LEED. It's a way to build. It's a certification. It's also a group of technologies, and it's becoming very popular. I now have a weekly webinar on passive house that I attend with hundreds, literally hundreds of experts, mostly engineers, architects, project managers, government planners, all on this webinar every week. And they have to do it every week because so many presenters want to share, because this passive house concept now is sweeping construction, which is a very good thing. What is it? It's basic, back to basics, thermal envelope, thick windows, thick walls, so small, the heating and cooling loads are so small that some of the systems broke down and many didn't even realize they had broken down. So resilient. You can be in there for days after the power goes out. And that's because energy, the thing about energy is it doesn't magically get used up. If you run out of cooling or heating at the end of the day, that's because your energy has leaked out, not because it magically got used up. So if your building is tight and thick and properly sealed, then you get what the house on the right, bottom right corner. If it's not, then you get the red house, red yellow house, where all the heat is leaking out, okay? And so the secret number two is, of course, that if you have a great envelope, you don't need a furnace. Even in, Baffin Island, you do not need a furnace because the heat is not leaking out. However, you will need an energy recovery ventilator if you want fresh air and you don't want mold and you don't want COVID and you don't, So an energy recovery ventilator is the thing that gives you 100%, by the way, fresh air, another bonus of clean energy, 100% fresh air, but it also, hot air is two things. It's hot, in other words, heat energy, and it's air, and they can be separated. And so an energy recovery ventilator expels the stale air, brings in the fresh, and maintains the heat energy, and that's what you need. You don't need a furnace. There are a lot of fantastic technologies coming out to help you, whether it's a business or a house. This one down here on the right is a heat pump water heater, because now that they've more or less solved the space heating challenge, the hot water, which is pretty higher temperature, is becoming one of the bigger challenges. So you don't need a furnace. Fix your building envelope. Get electric heat pumps and an ERV and start self-generating your electricity with solar panels like these people have done passive houses in Ontario, Goderich, Collingwood, Minden, and Western Canada. I do a lot of, I talk about passive house a lot, so I have even more screens than this because it's all over the world. There's a couple thousand passive houses in North America now, and about 100,000 in the world. And they come big. The picture in the bottom left, that's a passive house in Harlem, 700 units. And it's not going to cost any more to build, but it's going to cost 60% less to heat and cool. And it's obviously, you will have the corollary greenhouse gas emissions are going to be pretty much zero because there's no fossil fuels in that building. I'm not sure if they have gas for the hot water, but for the space heating, no fossil fuels. Okay, secret number three, as I alluded to already, passive house does not have to cost more. When I first started writing about it, it was 30% more upfront to build. And this is going back about 10 years ago. But you would get it all back, of course, in operating costs because it's 60% less to operate, for the energy. But people care a lot about upfront costs. And so the good news is that, transplanted architects like Tim McDonald in Philadelphia have taught everybody in Pennsylvania how to do transplanted from Toronto, sorry, have taught all the builders down there how to do passive house for less than 5%, and in some cases, less than 0% more up front. And this is starting to become the norm. It's under 10% now for upfront construction. And you're starting to get your money back in the first couple of years. Another great secret, most of our buildings are going to be prefab, or a lot of them, maybe not most. I can't predict the future completely, but it is a huge trend. So those buildings, they cost less to make. The unions even like it because they're in a nice warm factory, same location every day. They have a safer place to work. The buildings are tighter sealed for passive house. And they're going to cost less because they're made in a factory. Lots of quality control. Now, if you have the situation where most people are, where they contact a builder or say they're doing a retrofit on their home, you want your home to be green, and you call an installer of HVAC systems, you're going to likely get a gas furnace installer. And he's going to say, oh, you don't want an air source heat pump. It won't work in Canada, which is not true. And he's going to say, let me put in a high efficiency gas furnace, which will have an efficiency level of 96% compared to 300% for an air source heat pump or 400% for geothermal. Now, they're clean. But the geothermal, I mention it mostly because during the transition, we're struggling to find people who will even put in an air source heat pump, let alone a geothermal, which is much more complicated and expensive. So if you have somebody who is saying that, well, the air source heat pump won't work and won't give me enough heat, which is misinformation, but they believe it, then you can give them geothermal, and for sure you're not going to have any problem because a geothermal ground source heat pump is like a furnace in terms of its BTUs. It has the same performance and it's clean. But of course, geothermal is expensive. I talked about New York and how they were beefing it up. They had to have a lot of government money to do that, but we're doing it. And we're also doing it at scale. So in Edmonton, they're building this huge Blatchford community. It's all geothermal. And so it's like a microgrid. It's like a district energy system. And it's all geothermal. Another fantastic one in Austin. In Austin, Texas, they have, I don't have my screen here because it's newer, but they have, it's got solar panels on the roof. They're production scale houses. They're like the old subdivisions in the suburbs, but they're built by the biggest builders, and they're not even complaining and whining because they've got a borehole in every backyard, solar panels on the roof, electric car charger in the garage, and starting to put in Tesla batteries all over the place. So, this is happening. Geothermal is something that's out in Richmond. They've been doing it for 5 years. They started with phase 1 and now they're at phase 5, and they've got, I guess it's 3,100 residences, the Walmart, a whole bunch. They're putting geothermal in schools. Quebec's been doing it for a long time. Quebec has a lot more clean energy. So they have fun with batteries. They have fun with geothermal, and they mostly attack costs. There's condos right downtown Toronto. This one, they built the 2 new towers, and then they powered up all the heating and cooling for the new 2 towers, plus a third seniors residence that was nearby with geothermal. And there's the New York one that I already talked about. Now, the other secret, number 6, of course, is solar and batteries. And microgrids. Microgrids is a fancy word for software that helps your batteries and your solar panels and maybe windmills and your home systems to all work together, or to share energy with each other, or to move energy from building to building in a larger complex. Microgrids are great. But one of the unexpected benefits that has revealed itself lately has been some economic news, and that is that retailers or anybody with a lot of locations are starting to put in big batteries, really, with their microgrid software, and they are realizing that they can shave their peak bills. You get charged for the highest amount of electricity you use in a month. That's or in a year. That puts you in whatever your rate category is. So if you can make that peak point get shaved down to a smaller category, you want to do that. So if you can buy electricity when it's cheap at night and when it's not affecting your peak, and you put it in your battery and then you use it in the daytimes, again, not affecting your peak, then you save all this money. And that's what these retailers are doing. But they're doing solar in schools also. This is the TDSB in Canada, in Toronto, 311 schools. They got a lot of, actually, it became complicated because a lot of the roofs were bad. So they, instead of making hay from the solar and making money, they got new roofs, mostly, a lot of them got new roofs. But in any case, it was a good deal. Started with one little school in the beach, this one, and then it just kept spreading all over. This is another one of those peak situations, but it's like an institution, it's a university. And in this case, and with many cases now, these companies are putting them in for free and leasing them back. So for, Soka University of California, they made $55,000 they saved in the first year, and it didn't cost them anything to put the microgrid and the battery in, because a private third-party company did it. And they just leased it back to them. And of course, the savings are going to increase because the way the lease works is they pay off the equipment, and then they'll just keep getting better. So the other thing, I alluded to this earlier, that federal government is starting to write a few checks, and I have my criticisms, but they're doing, well, I think much better than the provincial, as an example. So the federal government and other governments are making money available, and they're doing it. The federal government, a lot of the money is going through other organizations like TAF, Toronto Atmospheric Fund, not called that, it's called the Atmospheric Fund, or the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, who are doing, they have billions. They've got more than $1 billion that the government gave them to do some of these big stuff. I want solar panels on my roof. That's going to cost me thousands and thousands of dollars. I need help with that. I either need a loan or I need a grant, or a little bit of both. But I just can't put it in right now. I just don't have the money. Or geothermal, same thing, tens of thousands of dollars, got to have the money. So the most recent green grant to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities is designed to create the PACE program. The PACE program is where it's on your property bill. You get the loan, you get the thing done up front, and you pay it back on your property bill. That takes the stress out if you're thinking, well, I might sell the house in 5 years, because now it's on title. The debt moves with the property. The asset moves with the property. You will get more for your home. So you're going to see a lot of PACE programs. They already have them. They're under the radar. Halifax did a great job with theirs. They're doing it for solar and solar thermal. You've got one in Toronto. It's got some kinks, but it's starting to get there. I think it's called HOME. But you're going to see a lot more of these. The grants are now being distributed, and you're going to see a lot more PACE type programs. Okay, electric vehicles. I mean, this should have been number one. And I say that because it's one of the things we should do first. It's one of the things we should do right now. And it's one of the things we can do. And it's very visible for our neighbors. It's one of the most important things that we can do. And the great news is now, I mean, Tesla last week, at Battery Day, they said they're going to have a $25,000 And there already are $25,000 electric cars. They're just not Teslas. So you have a lot of choice right now. There's no reason to think that the upfront costs of an electric car are that much more than a gas car. Especially there are grants. Canada gives you 5,000, the feds, and out in BC it's even more. They've got a provincial grant, I think, to go with it. So like look into it. Electric cars are now like you're just going to save money in the long run. Like I mean, you're not paying. You're going to save 2,000 a year or 1,500 a year on gas. I mean, and then the maintenance. I mean, the fleet people are the ones who have studied. They're saving. New York, they have 591 electric vehicles. They're saving 80% on fuel, and this stuff is not like nobody's guessing here. They're keeping tabs on the metrics, and they're saving 65% on maintenance. So you know it can happen. Everybody's buying electric buses. China has most of them, but they're starting to buy them all over. The TEECC has ordered a bunch of them. Electric buses still are very expensive compared to a diesel, but at the front end. But these things have capital budgets. These cities have capital budgets, and they have figured out, wow, I'm actually going to save 400,000 over the course of the 10-year or whatever 15-year life of that bus. So that's why they're ordering them. But pretty soon they'll be as cheap as diesel buses too. So you're seeing, you know, electric vehicles for all applications now. That used to be that you would have all kinds of, oh, we don't have this yet, or that'll never work. But it's changing. Things are changing. You got the garbage trucks. Vancouver is testing a fire truck to go with their geothermal fire station. And then the freight trucks. And these numbers are how many orders Tesla got right away without ever building a truck. They still haven't, but they since have added more more orders than these, and they still haven't built one. But they're well, they've built. I should say they've built more than one. Excuse me. I'm going to stop for a second. Take a break, everybody. I'm going to fix my throat. Hold on. Better? Yes, that's better. Okay, secret number 9. Well, I guess you got to talk about utility solar, utility power generation. And as of 2020, the wind, solar, and storage is now the lowest cost. It's lower than coal, gas, and nuclear. It's cleaner than coal, gas, and nuclear. It's safer than coal, gas, and nuclear. And so those, I consider them obsolete. They are obsolete. So that's a secret that shouldn't be a secret, and we are making good progress. There's, I think it's 95% of new generation now is renewables and batteries, and I think it's just, again, like all of the clean energies, it's a question of momentum. We need more momentum. So we're going in the right directions, but we need to step it up and just crank it up, right? So, okay. Secret number 10, I think I've covered in the foregoing, but I'm sort of a summary here. Clean energy is not going to cost us anything. An article I've just written in Green America, no, in Plumbing Engineer in Chicago says, can America electrify? Yes, it can. And it deals mostly with the economics and the technologies. Electric vehicles, as we've discussed, cost less to operate. Super insulated buildings, as discussed, cost less to operate, and these are the same to build now. wind, solar, and storage, they cost less. So, I mean, you see a lot of misinformation. You see a lot of pundits commenting in the media. And when you see that, you should tell them, call Bruce Nagy, because it's not going to cost us a lot. And if you follow some of the developments in other countries, you'll see where they've adopted a goal to do something by 2035. And then, they try it for a couple of years and they go, oh, we're adjusting our timeline to 2028 because we can do this easily and we can do it for less cost. So why wouldn't we? And that mostly applies to renewables, but also I've seen it with fleets. I've seen it with the buildings that I mentioned in Pennsylvania, where the builders were practically forced to build passive house, and then they started going, "Hey, this is fantastic! They sell better. Everybody wants to buy them." So I guess now I actually should have played this when I was fixing my throat, because that would have given me, the throat fixing break. But here's the 1-minuter. So I guess now, according to my original plan, I was going to, read a little bit from the book and continue the sales pitch. So I will. I'll just read a little bit from the book. We still seem to have enough time to do that, and also to do some questions with you and discussion. And Bruce has told me that we can go longer if all of us or some of us want to anyway. So, but I'll read a little bit from the book because, I have to try and sell the book. So it's a whole new discussion. Now the key question is how? Almost everyone, incredibly, finally agrees. Powerful people in Davos, leaders in Beijing and Brussels, and many in Washington, and the Earth's other major countries are on board. Executives in the world's big investment banks, commercial banks, insurance companies, reinsurers, the most successful corporations, consultants, and entrepreneurs, they want action. Government leaders of the largest states and cities in the United States are well advanced in implementing clean energy programs. That might be too strong. The United Nations, the International Monetary Fund, the Pentagon, NASA, the planet's leading scientists, science academies, universities, and think tanks, they've reached a consensus. The globe's major media organizations, foundations, global charity organizations, churches, and nonprofits are all on the same page. Planners, builders, architects, and engineers concur, as do financial advisors, journalists, school teachers, entertainers, medical leaders, agriculture organizations, transportation people, drivers, janitors. We even have the support of the Association for the Preservation of the Coelacanth. It's a prehistoric fish. We're finally thinking in the same direction. Well, not everyone. There's an 81-year-old conservative in Oklahoma, still thinks it's a hoax and wrote a book about it. But most of the rest of us have finally agreed on a few realities. Most of us now accept that we should immediately address climate change by modernizing our energy systems, moving the global economy into technologically progressive era. In 2015, representatives from the Earth came together in Paris, where these ideas became the basis for a written agreement. One goal, one planet, one home. There remains one key conundrum. Although we have reached seemingly unlikely global consensus among the 7 billion of us, few agree on exactly how to repair our planet. There are some opinions about what are the most important solutions, but studies indicate that for most of us, we just admit we don't know exactly how to solve it. The mission of this book is to bring together decades of research and experience of hundreds of technical and other experts to lay the groundwork for a conversation that must advance quickly and result in a plan that is easy to understand and implement. It starts with how. And so that's a little bit from the book. Well, actually, I'll just read the end a little bit at the end. When we are on our deathbeds, some of us will realize that winning life's monopoly game by cleverly accumulating and protecting a pile of money might seem smart, but it's pretty meaningless in the grand scheme of things. We might realize that family, friendships, having a place to call home are the most important things in life. And we might wonder why it took so long for our priorities to seem so clear. Earth is our only viable home. We need to save it. Some will say that changing your values and lifestyle is the only way. In this book, I've argued that you don't even need to work that hard. We can do a big part of the job by making buildings, power plants, and vehicles our priorities. Get them right and the rest will follow. If you're like me, you're generally obsessing over a new low-calorie gastro creation, a critical career coup d'etat, or a new friend novelty. Might I suggest a short break for, well, a deep breath. Take a few breaths. It's invigorating, right? Peaceful. Above all, it's still possible. And that's the end of Bruce's dramatic presentation on the book and on some clean energy stuff. And I hope that I have stimulated you either to buy the book, but more importantly, to ask some questions. I hope you have some. And I guess in order to find that out, I have to click stop sharing. Do I have to click stop sharing, Bruce, to get back to you?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing there.
Then we can see each other.
Okay, I have stopped sharing.
Okay. Thank you, Bruce. That was quite a extensive presentation. I know for myself, I felt very uplifted by the message of it's a hopeful message. The idea that it's possible and
I think possible is a good word.
Possible with what we know now. So that's a very uplifting message.
Yeah.
So if it's okay with everybody, we've got a number of questions here in the chat, and I think I'd like to start with those questions, and then if there are more questions or comments once we're through the ones being registered in the chat, we can continue from there. Is that agreeable to everyone? Okay, great. So first question, I actually wrote quite a few questions myself, so forgive me if
no worries.
That I just curious if with your focus on solutions, are you familiar with Project Drawdown?
Oh yes, and I have a comment about Project Drawdown, and that is this. Excellent book. Let me say that right off. I have a few problems, like most, we always disagree. We shouldn't. The Republicans, they all agree on everything all the time. It works against us when we're intelligent and we have discourse. But anyway, Drawdown is great, and it does much what I do, and I think more on an academic level. Hundreds of writers, or it seems like hundreds, maybe there's 20, I don't know, a lot of writers. And so I felt that the assumptions got a little strained, and I felt that 200 solutions in a list is a lot. And I didn't think anything was wrong with their solutions. I thought they were, I agreed with the book, and actually some of their authors agreed with mine. But mine is a different approach. Mine is for ordinary folks. Mine is for, making it simpler, trying to make, like their number one thing is refrigeration, which I write about frequently. And it's a huge problem. It affects the ozone, it affects the climate change, so but that's based on a formula they've used, right? So it might not be the most important thing for other people, for a business, it just depends who you are.
Right. Okay, thanks. So next question is from Rabia here. Would love your thoughts on viable alternatives to fossil fuels for heating, cooling homes. Sounds like you might have addressed that somewhat in your presentation, but
Yes,
if you want to just.
but I'd be happy to elaborate,
Mhm.
because it can be confusing, and the most, I hope that I think there are some key technologies for buildings. There are a lot of technologies. There's water heat recovery. There's LED lighting. There's a lot of technology. But the key technologies are related to heating and cooling, and water heating. Okay, and so space heating and water heating. And I think I mentioned passive house, and the key there is a heat pump. Now the heat pump in a passive house only has to be an air source heat pump. You don't need to drill boreholes into the ground because you have a tight building envelope. At the conferences, they say we can heat this house with a hairdryer. So, you don't need a huge system in a passive house. It's like the old days when you just make the three pigs, right? It's like it's the thick walls and the great windows. And so, but an air source heat pump is a fossil fuel refrigeration appliance. It supplies heating and cooling. You need to have a ventilator of some kind because you've got a tight building. So that's when you need an energy recovery ventilator, which I think I explained how it works. Now, the next key technology for buildings is geothermal, as I mentioned. And again, it's for really big space heating and cooling challenges. And it might even be transitional. We might find 3 decades from now, all the buildings are built properly. They are using super efficient air source, and they've got they're all going to be self-contained. They're all going to be self-generating. They're all going to have solar windows, solar roofs. Tesla's selling the solar roof, solar coatings. Everything's going to generate. So even geothermal is overkill. Many heating engineers have told me that it's overkill, but it has its applications right now for sure during our transition. So that's a key technology. So you have geothermal, which is ground source heat pumps. It's like a furnace, but it uses heat warmth from under our feet. And it's a refrigeration appliance. The refrigerant, by the way, can be a natural refrigerant, and it is always sealed. And the natural refrigerants have much lower global warming potential if they leak out. So you don't have to worry about that. So it's a ground source heat pump is a key technology, an air source heat pump is a key technology, an energy recovery ventilator is a key technology, and solar and batteries are key technologies, which are, I think the rooftop thing has emerged as being unexpectedly important. The distributed energy thing has become, back, I guess 10 years ago, the president of the Solar Association told me, well, I think distributed is going to be big. And I was kind of skeptical because I had been hanging around with Ontario Hydro and they had been telling me all about utility scale solar farms and wind turbines. And of course, those are what we are depending on very strongly for our transition right now. But it's starting to look like, with all these self-contained buildings and microgrid software and sharing of batteries like vehicle to grid, it's a complicated concept. Anyway, that utilities are just going to be a sort of one player. They're not going to be the dominant source of our energy in the future. We are each going to trade in our communities. You know, I've got extra this month and you don't, and you know, our microgrid software will just go, we'll trade some over to you. We won't even have to do that because the artificial intelligence will do it for us. And it will just trade properly. The vehicle to grid that I alluded to a minute ago is going to emerge. They're already testing it in Australia and Germany. It's where we all have electric cars in our garage. And you only use your car, 10% of the time, 90% of the time it's parked, right? So what if you were paid to share your battery with the local utility so that they don't have to build that next gas peaker plant, and instead they borrow a bunch of power from your battery temporarily for 15 minutes in the summer when everybody's air conditioner is on, and they pay you, and they pay you 3 times it is right now, 3 times as much as it costs you to drive. And you can opt out, like, oh, I'm gonna be using my car this weekend, I'm going on a big trip. You can just opt out, right? You're opting out, right? So vehicle to grid is an exciting emerging kind of thing that you will see down the road. It's still being tested more right now. So there's a lot of good news. It's just momentum, and it's all about who we vote for. We must vote for the right people.
I wonder if I could ask a clarifying question about the air source heat pumps.
Yes.
Yeah, so we're right now looking at replacing our furnace, and so I've been trying to learn about them, and you know, they are like more expensive than the high efficiency furnaces, so we're trying to figure out if we can how we would spend that extra 10K, you know. But what I learned is that yeah, it would be 14K versus like 4K for so that's kind of unfortunate.
Who are you talking to?
Yeah,
are you
Goldfinch.
Talking to somebody who normally installs gas furnaces?
Yeah. Yeah, a very reputable person in our neighborhood who does high efficiency gas furnaces, and like with the rebate, it would be like 4K. So obviously, and you know, my brother's an engineer.
How big is the house?
It's a small standard 2-floor house.
So he's not making any recommendations about improving the building envelope. He's just going to swap it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I don't think that I can have good news for you because the two work very much together. You shouldn't have to be spending 14,000 though. I know that. But
on a heat source on an air pump, air source heat pump.
You should, because especially if it's a small bungalow, the main thing is get that envelope fixed. Your load will go way down, and get some quotes and ask a lot of questions and go on the web and look for companies that are talking about heat pumps. Look for companies that are installing. Ask him how many he's installed. You know, like, you got to ask questions. You got to find people who are progressive. You have to, or else they're going to on purpose price that stuff higher. They're going to price it higher. They're going to say it won't work. They're going to say you need more than you need. Okay. But having said all of that, if you don't fix the envelope, you're going to have challenges with air source heat pumps, affordability and capacity.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna ask, maybe if we could leave it there, so we get a lot of other questions to address in different topics. Lowell, I see you got your hand raised, but I'd like to move on to other topics at this point. I'm gonna actually, Lowell, and since you got your hand raised, I'll move on to your question next. I'll skip mine for now. Your question is this the condo in the junction with a community roof garden? Has it been built already? I think that question is in reference to the project that Bruce showed us in one of the pictures.
No, that was the one I showed you was Lillian Park. Lillian Park is it's near Eglinton and Young. It's a private sector project. They have 2 very large towers, but they also have a seniors home.
No,
Like,
there was a smaller one, actually. It was a smaller one with a lot of balconies, and it's almost like a mid-rise. I think it's a Toronto project that has
are we talking about
one of the earlier slides.
right at the beginning of my presentation?
Yeah.
There's a picture of a building. That's the plant.
That's the plant.
It's in Liberty Village.
Oh, Liberty.
It's about 5 stories. It's all very wellness and agriculture. It's got a garden on the roof,
Yeah.
and it's that's geothermal, and
Okay.
that's they don't even need geothermal, but they've got it, and that's yeah, and that's a really good project. It's just finished now. Now
Oh.
I want to go back to Kathy, because it was Kathy, right? Because whoever it was that said
Rabia.
Sorry.
The last
It was-
question, Rabia?
Rabia.
Oh, sorry. Because you asked, I think you asked about an affordable project, an affordable housing project. Well, anyway, if anyone is curious about affordable housing projects, a lot of progress with them. So in Toronto, there are some underway, but the ones I'm most familiar with are in Woodstock, Blossom Park, and in Hamilton. Quite a few good projects. One of the emblematic project that all the governments are watching right now is Ken Sobel Tower, 18 stories, because it was built in 1967 and it's a retrofit. So they're retrofitting this tower into passive house standard with heat pumps, air source heat pumps. And they're almost done. It's going to open next year, and it's going to solve a great deal of problems. Well, first of all, they had mold in there and they had asbestos. You know, it's a 1967 building, but the governments are all interested in it because it's a retrofit, and there are thousands of buildings coming to the end of their useful life. Their HVAC systems are coming to the end of their life. They have to gut them and renovate them anyway. It's stupid to level them because they can save millions by not leveling them. So that's a big project. But the affordable housing is very encouraging in Portland and Ottawa. There's lots of passive houses and geothermal projects.
Okay, I'm gonna keep on pushing ahead with other questions. It was very clear from your presentation that you're not pro-nuclear, and yet I hear often that nuclear reactors, you know, are a solution that we absolutely need in order to deal with greenhouse gases. So I just love for you to comment on that.
Okay, and I'm going to be rabidly anti-nuclear, so you may have to stop me. I'm rabidly anti-nuclear for many reasons, and I'll summarize. It's not safe, it's not cheap, it's not healthy, and it's not clean. It's not green. After 65 years, the nuclear industry has gotten really good at getting money out of governments, but they still haven't solved their waste problem. 65 years of a technology not being able to solve its biggest problem is the big problem.
Okay.
Nuclear is the most expensive by far of all forms of power generation. I know that you may not think that, because you may have heard the opposite for decades from who? From the nuclear industry. But now numerous investigations have shown not only is it by far the most expensive, it's the most corrupt, with payouts going to all kinds of people. So nuclear is a disaster. It has been from the beginning. I think it's the biggest mistake humanity has ever made, including nuclear bombs. It's not safe, and it's not cheap power. It's very expensive. And you can build a nuclear plant in 16 years. You can build a solar or wind farm in about 8 months.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks, Bruce.
So it's not even relevant to the future.
Okay.
It's just not.
All right, great. Thanks for the response. Next, I'm going to go to Nick's question, because I wrote a few in a row there, but I can skip on here. Doesn't the economic impact from the insurance industry help to drive business awareness? Nick, did you want to just explain that your question a little bit there? Do you want to?
I was doing some research about the cost of climate change economically in Ontario for something I was trying to write that just went nowhere. But I noticed that the figures keep going up and up and up and up. And if the insurance companies have to pay out that much more, their rates just go up. So wouldn't business pay attention to the fact that the insurance rates are going up because of the climate change?
Yes, there isn't a single insurance company on the face of the earth that does not believe in climate change, because they deal in statistics, and that's how they make their money. So they know that all the storms are becoming more and more intense, but their clients are big corporations who are pressuring them not to raise their premium. So they've been incrementalists, like banks and governments. They've been slow. They've been plodding along, but they are raising rates. They are starting to not insure a lot of coastal properties. They are, the big reinsurers are the ones who have been dragging the sub-insurance companies along, because they have the most analysts and the smarts and the most money. And so Munich Re and some of the Swiss Re, they've been the ones who have been making, but again, but there have been huge proclamations from them in the last actually 3 years to get corporations ready for the fact that your premiums are going to go up, up, up. And if you don't have it in your strategy, if you don't have climate change in your strategy, you're going to pay more. And if you have stranded assets or no pathway to greener operations or greener products, you're going to get penalized by regulations, and we are not going to ensure that.
Okay, thank you. And so I'm just I'm mindful of the time. It's 6:32. Bruce, you said you're okay for a little while longer.
Okay.
Are others all right to continue with the Q&A for a little longer here? Just give me a quick thumbs up. Yeah, yes. Okay, great. And so next question was from me again. You talked a lot about building and the building stuff, and it just occurs to me that, like, things like cars and stuff, we go through them. There's a cycle of, like, they only last a few years, and then there's a cycle so that you can integrate new technology. But with older homes, how are we going to effectively retrofit so many of our older homes? And isn't it going to be expensive and difficult to convince homeowners?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because if I was writing drawdown, building retrofits would be at the top of my list, okay? Mm-hmm. And that's because it's the biggest challenge. It's the biggest challenge, and because we only replace our buildings at a rate of about 2 or 3% per year. So what that implies is that we are going to take 50 years to replace our buildings, right? For 30 to 50 years, right? And so this is why New York and a few very progressive states are not only changing the building code as Toronto has done and BC Step Code have done for new construction, but they are also talking about it for existing buildings. And it really is, in the construction business, a regulatory framework. That's what's required. Again, it's like all the corporations. Self-regulation does not work. You have to impose it. So it's very positive now for new buildings. Almost all the cities are going to do something like the Toronto Green Standard or the BC Step Code, both of which are very much like the Passive House, which I described at length earlier, okay? So you won't be able to have a gas furnace in a brand new building in Toronto after 2030. It will not be possible. It'll still be technically allowed, but no one will do it, because they won't be able to meet the kilowatts. They just won't. So again, going back to New York, they've actually taken that a step further, and they've had the guts, and it does take guts, to say also existing buildings by 2024, you must renovate or you'll face big fines. And they've actually passed that law. And many have talked about it, many have tried, but it's not an easy thing to do. And that's why I keep saying, vote for the right people and more momentum and push, 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 because the building codes, building code is complicated. Building code specifically is a national thing, it's a state and province thing, and it's also city standards and regulations. Fortunately, as we know, our cities are leading the planet on clean energy. And fortunately, our cities are not waiting around for the laggards at the state, provincial, and national levels to get their act together, because they are incrementalists. They're slow. They're deniers, delayers. It's a drag. So we really need to push our cities more, because they're the bright light, because they are dragging, you saw my little train, they are dragging the national governments into the picture. And we need to retrofit everything. Now, the good news is that there is a lot of money now starting to be applied. So the money that TAF, the Atmospheric Fund, Toronto Atmospheric Fund it used to be called, just got 40 million more to go with the 50 they had. They got $90 million. They're going to spend all of that money on retrofit projects, pretty much. Most of that money, it might not be all. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities, as I said, they have $1 billion. So none of this is going to happen overnight, but at least we're addressing it. We're beginning to address it, and the public needs to keep the pressure on and demonstrate our support for this.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Nick here. Rabia, I think we discussed that question that you've got there, so I'm going to move on to Nick. What's a typical retrofit cost for older homes? Do you have a number for that?
Retrofits are really difficult, and that's why you need government help. They're expensive. So it depends on the place, depends on what it needs.
Okay.
I'll tell you one thing. Some people do them for almost nothing, and others spend over 100,000. So that's the range, okay? So it depends on what the condition is of your building, what you're able to do yourself, how good you are at buying, and those kinds of questions. But it's amazing. The fastest paybacks come from the envelope, and the envelope is $50 compared to hundreds of dollars per whatever the measurement is. I can't remember. So do your envelope first. Put insulation in yourself. Seal your windows yourself. Buy better windows. Better windows are expensive. Buy the triple pane windows. If you're going to take out your furnace, spend the money on triple pane windows. The air source heat pump, you need a small one then.
Okay. Next here, we've got, okay, question from me again. Is geothermal an option everywhere?
I kind of covered that. I think it will become overkill, but it can be done almost anywhere. I think that's really what the question is. Can it scientifically be done anywhere? It can be done in most places with a bunch of caveats, okay? Because the ground conditions are definitely part of the science. So, for instance, if you have sandy soil, it's falling in. If you have, I just was talking to a guy who's had moist soil, so they had to drill a certain way for it to not collapse in on itself. There's out in Newfoundland, it's all rock. It's all bedrock. They're drilling into bedrock, but it actually is very good for containing heat and for drawing out heat and cooling. So but the short answer is yes, you can do geothermal just about anywhere. It's obviously the conditions are better in some places than others. Iceland, for example, is doing, and I'm going to make a little distinction right here. I don't want to get too complicated, but there's geothermal energy and there's geothermal heating and cooling. They're different. They're the same principle of taking the heat of the ground, but one's very deep and it's for creating electricity. That's what Iceland does a lot of. But Iceland also does a lot of district heating and cooling directly from the ground because it's so warm. They have all the hot springs. They are where the tectonic plates meet. It's very hot there. Canada has lots of geothermal energy and geothermal heating and cooling resources. We could power the entire country 5 times over with the geothermal energy we have. That doesn't make it easy, but that's the fact. So, and when we argued with Enbridge, which we did a couple of years ago when we had a different provincial government, we explained to them, look, why would you want to pipe gas across the country to sell it to us when you can just sell us the heat beneath our feet? You don't make much money on the gas anyway. You make all your money on piping. So just, it's pipes, you know, geothermal is pipes. Why don't you just sell us the heat under our feet? You'll have better margins. And they were going to do it. They came to the geothermal conference. They were planning a big division, but then the Ford government came in. That.
Okay, thanks.
Keep going. Okay.
How many car chargers exist in Ontario and where?
I don't know the complete answer to that, but this is what I do know. Hundreds are being installed on the 400 series of highways. So it's somewhere between 200 and 400. I don't know the exact number. That's on the 400. So the 401, the 403, all the 400 series all around the province. But that's just what, that was a public money project. There are also lots of private organizations like Tesla, like Electra, there are a lot of automakers and utilities who are now getting into the business. They want a piece of the action, right? They know that every gas station is going to be a charging station, so they're buying up charger companies, and they're getting into the business. So I don't know the to 95% of charging is done at home. That the batteries now are 200 to 400 miles, which is 300 to 500 kilometers range on a single charge. Because, you know, it's so convenient. It's you wake up with a full tank every day. You just plug it in at night. It's like plugging in your phone, right? So 90 or 95% of the charging is done, and there are hundreds of thousands of chargers being installed in North America. I mean, the plans are in place. Where they are at, you can find out in about 5 minutes. You can Google it. You just Google, where are the chargers? And maps will pop up. There's about 5 different websites.
Okay, great, thanks. There's a comment here from Lynn. She's pointing out that Toronto has something called HELP, the Home Energy Loan Program.
That was one of the PACE programs I was talking about, HOME. I'm not sure if it's a loan or a grant. I think it's a loan, a low interest loan, and it goes on your property tax. The glitch that they had in Toronto, and this is going back a couple of years, was that the banks were leery because there was a waiver you had to sign saying that, you know, the government would be first in line if you defaulted, okay? And the banks went, wait a minute, we're not letting the government be first in line before us. We're the bank, right? So there was a little bit of arguing, go back and forth for a couple of years, but I think they've ironed out a lot of those kinks. Last time I was talking to the people at the City of Toronto, they said we've got that worked out with banks. And also, as I say, there's a lot more money flowing in from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for these programs. So you're going to see some changes.
Great. I'm just, since it's relevant to what we're talking about, Lowell has added that Toronto has a new rebate program called Better Homes TO. And this is a new one with Enbridge from the city, betterhomesto.ca. So just adding that in there.
I don't know a great deal about it, but I think it's a lot of technology rebates on various heat pumps and stuff.
New technology, yeah. High efficiency gas furnaces and windows upgrading and attic insulation.
Get that stuff.
Yeah,
get that money. That's
okay. Next question. I'm just, you know, you're really touting electric vehicles. You even said they maybe should be the top secret or #1 secret. But isn't it true that electric vehicles only save GHGs if the electricity is in fact produced without generating GHGs? And I'm just considering what's going on in Ontario, where we're actually going backwards towards, closing down nuclear plants and generating more electricity with gas. So just comment in terms of electric vehicles in that regard. And I'm going to ask you, Bruce, I love how in-depth you are with your answers, but just mindful of time, and we got a few more questions. Like, try to keep try to keep the responses brief if you can.
First of all, we're not going to have gas in Ontario for much longer because of the economics. The politicians will get kicked out because of the economics. The utilities are buying renewables. So it will be cleaner. Strictly speaking, an existing nuclear plant is generating clean electricity. That doesn't mean I'm in favor of nuclear, as we've already said. Electric vehicles are already more efficient than a gas vehicle on the energy to wheel efficiency. But also, it's crazy not to participate when you know that everything is changing and disrupting so quickly now, that it's crazy not to assume that you can find a clean source of electricity. The backsliding that's happening in Ontario is not going to last. Trust me, it can't.
Okay, thank you. Nick is asking about tide and water turbines as a technology.
Excellent. Yes, it was a little slow coming to the fore because Mother Nature is furious sometimes, especially the ocean. So they broke a lot of technology that they tested, and they had, of course, it had cost them millions and billions. So it took a little bit of time, but they seem to now have solved a lot of the problems. They are moving towards making it economically viable. And instead of putting, well, some of the stuff is still down in the ocean, and they've solved some problems there. But one of the interesting ones is that they've begun to use the floating ones because it damages the equipment less. And they've started to be able to harness tidal, and tidal is a huge resource, a massive resource. Tidal, along with offshore wind and floating offshore wind, and floating solar too.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And Lowell has got a comment here: for passive house heating to be minimum, the shape. I guess he probably means the shape of the building has to be very small and compact. Cubic as possible, least surface area for heat loss. So just some comments in terms of,
well, it doesn't matter how big the building is for passive house. It does matter how big the room is for an air source heat pump. You need to have several heads in different, wherever the various cubes of your home are. The size of the building is not relevant, but the envelope of the building is highly relevant. So you have to have a well-sealed huge building or a well-sealed small building.
I don't think that's necessarily true. I do. I'm a member of the Passive Buildings Canada. Yes. I'm an architect. Yeah, I work for myself in North York. But yeah, I'm not sure if because the heat pump is the most efficient ones are what they call the mini split, and they're ductless, and they work only in a. I mean the standard, I think that what they would try to do was to put one of those on one floor, and then but the building has to be very small. They would put it in the hallway area, and then the rooms, the doors would have to be open, and then do you
know what a VRF is?
Sorry?
Do you know what a VRF system is?
High velocity, is that what that is? But those are very expensive.
Variable. For
Oh.
larger buildings, it's a heat pump system.
Yes, but I think there's only one company in Canada that makes it. And I searched them because this old house, the program from the States, there's other companies, but I think they're like, it's a high-end product, and then or system. But I just want to mention that there's a building, a low-rise, low-income housing retrofit building in Hamilton. It's called Indwell. That was the I think the construction company. Yeah.
Familiar with it.
Okay. I went to the lecture. That was the only building that uses a heat pump system that is very successful. But if I remember, it's on the Passive Buildings Canada. They post all the lectures on their website. And the one that I did go to, and I watched it once, I have to watch it again sometimes, but it was by this East Indian engineer. I guess, he's was born in India, but so what happens in that situation was that they were able to use mini splits because the units, the condo units were so small, only one bedroom or maybe two bedrooms at most. And then they only had one, and I think it was a centralized HRV system that was able to recirculate the warm air and throughout the whole building. And if I remember correctly, one of the most important thing that they did was the kitchen exhaust. They did not have kitchen exhaust that would, exhaust the air out into to the outside. So that
okay, I want to stop you. Right there.
Okay.
I'm a columnist for plumbing engineer in Chicago, the American Society of Plumbing Engineers. I know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I don't think that you are very educated on this topic. I think that you should go onto something called Happy Hour. Okay.
Really?
It's every single Wednesday. It's online. Happy Hour. It's Passive House. It's hundreds of Passive House people from all over the world talking about their projects, showing PowerPoints. You need to go on there. You need to learn about what's happening in the world with Passive House.
I do follow the movement. I'm a member.
I appreciate you guys like sharing ideas and clarifying, but I'm thinking that maybe that it,
or reach out to me individually and I'll send you.
Sure. Yeah, but that would be awesome. Yeah, because there's a kind of like technical conversation between two technical guys here. Yeah. And I think Lowell, I think your next point there may be sort of related to what you were just talking about, right? I'd like to clarify whether the air source heat pumps can be ducted to the various rooms, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe that could be part of your conversation and follow up with Bruce. Yeah. Okay. Great. And I don't see any other questions. Just some comments. And we did address the thing about the better homes. And there's one already finished called Parkdale Landing by Indwell Construction. Did you want to say anything else about that, Lowell?
Was the project that was like it's the most successful among the high-rise like retrofit project in Canada. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
So that was part of that exchange as well. Okay, great. Any other questions here? We just got a few minutes left. So any one last question for anybody?
Okay, so Lowell, my email is bruce.nagy@rogers.com.
Bruce.nagy@rogers.com. Okay, thanks.
So, I'll send you some articles on a big, huge building out in Kansas that's all Passive House. I'll send you some articles on a building in downtown Toronto.
Well, no, but the Kansas,
guys, you got
it's much warmer there. Okay.
Did you get his email address, Lowell?
I got it, but I do follow the Fine Home Buildings magazine and also the Green Building Advisor. Do you .com? Yeah, I read those. Yeah, okay.
Seriously, continue the conversation. You guys got lots to talk about. It sounds like.
Okay.
I do have one question, and I think it's a nice wrap-up question, and I did save it. So, in your opinion, like with all of these solutions, available to us stuff, what is the biggest thing that's blocking us from just wholesale adopting this and getting into a true like full-on transition? What is the biggest thing that's getting in the way? As people who want to make change, it would be nice to know where we should push the hardest to make the things happen.
Well, I really do believe it's the regulatory framework. That's what has to happen. We've learned now that if the government doesn't lead, nothing is going to happen. We've tried a lot of other routes in the past, and this is the answer. The answer is we have to teach our governments, and we have to get them to teach the rest of the population. That's the only way it's going to happen. We have to vote out anybody who's not on board with clean energy.
So politics is the big lever. Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you. Okay, folks, I think we're pretty much at our 7 o'clock here. I just I want to say thank you. You brought like a wealth of knowledge, and the detail and the thoroughness of your answers is really appreciated. I certainly learned a lot. I just open it up.
Buy the book.
Yes, I will.
Just open it up for anyone else who wants to make any final just comments or appreciations or whatever.
Yeah, I just put the book on hold. I used to work at the Toronto Public Library, so there's 3 books. You can get it right away. It's available in the library.
Excellent.
Just want to say thank you so much. It was a fantastic talk, and I learned so much, and I really appreciate your both the detail was so important, but also the big picture. Like you moved between both, really well. So I loved it. Thank you.
Oh, great, thank you.
Yeah, I echo those comments. It was really fascinating and inspiring and thorough, and thank you. Really great.
Let's all go out there and make the world green.
Yeah, lots of fun, Bruce. Thanks.
Do our parts.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Bruce, and to the other members here, if you guys can hang on just 2 minutes, because I just want to make sure we're dialed in for next week's meeting. But
Okay,
Bruce,
I'm going to exit, right?
yeah, please.
Okay, thanks everybody. Be good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.